Tuesday, welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we keep you connected to student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from the Lewis and Clark College community. And we do so twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can find us easily. Just type in lcpioneers.com/live, and that takes you to our Facebook Live page and any of the shows available to watch on demand after the fact at lcpioneers.com. Just click on the fan zone or go to youtube.com/lcpios. Hi, everyone. I am Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark. We are the Pioneers based out of Portland, Oregon, and members of NCAA Division III. So over 430 institutions across that spectrum, that level of the NCAA, the largest division specifically, and a chance for our student athletes to compete on a national stage in 19 intercollegiate athletics programs. Lewis and Clark, a member of the 9-institution Northwest Conference, so other teams from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington. It's been a really fun year. In fact, we're into the last days of classes at Lewis and Clark for the spring 2021 semester. So everyone's kind of winding down. There's going to be very likely multiple Lewis and Clark teams into the Northwest Conference postseason in terms of squads, in terms of sports that have a conference tournament for which you have to qualify. We're also going to have a chance here in a few moments to talk to the head golf coach of Lewis and Clark, both the men's and women's programs, James Yen. They always have their postseason series of events. It's just that this year it was all condensed into one semester. So we'll talk about what that looked like, an all-conference honor for one of Yen's golfers. So we'll discuss that and what's ahead for the program. It's all ahead on this edition of the show. And we invite you to get in touch with the program. Of course, you can do so through our Facebook Live comments. We always like to hear if you have any questions for any of our guests, or maybe you have a suggestion for a future guest of the show. You can do so. Let us know via email, sports@lclark.edu. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both of those platforms is LC Pioneers. You can also find us, of course, Facebook at facebook.com/LCPioneers. All right, let's get into the show and have a chance to talk to the head coach of Lewis and Clark Golf. It's the third appearance by my count in the show that we've been doing since March 2020. James Yen joins us on lcpioneers.com live. Coach, always great to have you on the show and take some time to talk about, at least in the prior appearances, what you were doing to get ready for competition. Now we have a chance to talk to you on the heels of having had competition. When you start to summarize the spring 2021 season, what are some of the things that come to mind?
It was a long season. It was very tough to get a season going and rolling with the conditions that we had, and those conditions was the pandemic. A lot of obstacles we had to face with basically transportation to and from courses, what we could do on courses, who do we play with, all that good stuff. And so a lot of questions came about before the season even started, and during the beginning part of the season. I don't think we got to kind of normalcy with a tournament play until our last tournament, which was a couple weekends. In fact, the weekend before last, with our Northwest Conference Championship. So, little things like how many people can we fit in the van, who has to drive to the course, who can play with each other, what are the parameters of tournament play, and all that good stuff. And we as coaches had multiple meetings about that. Can spectators come to an outdoor event? I mean, golf is definitely an outdoor event where you would think safety was at a prime, but there's also conference rules into play with the president's voting on stuff, so which we had to abide, which was unlike other golf courses, for example, had parameters as well that we had to follow, right? Couldn't take out the flag from the pin. We didn't have any rakes in the sand. So a lot of obstacles, a lot of bumps that we had to kind of maneuver and get around. But we got through it. It was a lot of work with all the coaches and everyone that was involved, our administration and the people planning our events. And so, but we're here, we made it, and we have some smiling faces, and we're grateful for the season that we had.
And grateful for all the work that you as coaches, I've said this quite a bit, and extending that to sports medicine staff and administration, and obviously throughout the whole entire college. There was a lot of work that went into having any sort of semblance of a collegiate semester, let alone intercollegiate athletics. And so I like you sharing some of those things that maybe go a little underrated, in the sense of like every golf course I've ever been on, you rake the sand traps. Those things aren't there. So it just has a little different look and feel. And I'm curious, as you think about what the year was like, can you kind of pro and con compare and contrast what some of the benefits were to playing such a condensed season? I mentioned the postseason championship series, which is made up of 3 different events, one of which is usually in a whole different semester, right? You had all those
Right.
in a 4-week span. So kind of compare and contrast, some good things that came from this semester having to do it so differently.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we play 3 majors in our year, which one in the fall and 2 in the spring, and those 3 majors determine kind of where we sit as a who goes on to nationals, right? And so everything was condensed into this semester, and so a lot of planning, not amongst not only ourselves as coaches, but also the administration, with all the way up to the commissioner, to our presidents, of what we could and couldn't do, how we were going to format this throughout the semester, who was going to host. We have a round, basically a circle going around amongst the 9 schools in our conference of who hosts these tournaments. We want to make it fair. We want to make it legit, but also we want to have the opportunity for other schools to kind of put their 2 cents in where they want to play. And so last year we missed out on 2 of those majors, and we were Lewis and Clark was one of the hosts for one of those majors in the classics, and so we had an opportunity to basically kind of carry it over to this year. Our commissioner kind of made that ruling, and so we kind of carried over the people who did have those host opportunities last year, got to do it this year, which I was thankful for. I didn't want to lose my spot in that rotation in order to host and whatnot, but it came with its challenges. I think that the pros with having a season like this was, number one, we had a season, we were able to get out and play golf. Annika Klunk last year was my lone senior that wasn't fortunate enough to kind of finish her out her senior year as the way she wanted, and so it was very telling in what things were lost in that regard. Her memories, opportunities that were lost, and so number one, just being grateful for one of my seniors this year, Ben Welker, to kind of close out the year in that regard. So a lot of pros in that regard, but also our formats were different. We had to play with each other as a team in the beginning of the year. So what that meant, normally what we would do is we would play with other teams. We'd have a threesome going out with another team, a Whitworth person and a Willamette person, for example. And we would be a threesome. There would be about 15, 18, 20 groups of threesomes going out. And so you have the opportunity to play against other people, see other people, have conversations with other people and what they're doing, make friendships in that regard. And so that wasn't available for us until, again, the last tournament of the year. So we had to play with each other in fivesomes, right? You have a team of 5, you score 4. And so we got to play with each other, and that was never done in the past. I think the pros of that is bonding as a team, getting each other closer in that regard, learning from each other, learning what others could do on a tournament level basis. It's always different going into a tournament with competition, knowing that every shot counts, right? Practice rounds are a little bit different. Going out and practicing is a little bit different. You have that kind of comfort of it's okay to make a mistake here and there, but when you go into a tournament, every shot definitely counts. And so that's when practice, you kind of earn your stripes when you're out there, is making those decisions, and people got to see how other of their teammates made those decisions, right? And also lifted each other up in that regard. They were there to kind of say it's okay if they had a bad shot, or if they made a great shot, and start cheering them on, right? Unlike playing with other teams, you don't kind of get that atmosphere going on. So that was definitely a pro. We as coaches got to stay with one group throughout the whole tournament. It was a hands-on deal with our kids, and that was very exciting to see and to do. Other tournaments, they're spread out amongst the course, so you would only spend a few holes with this person and then a few holes with this person. And so you kind of have to manage that. That coaching kind of comes very technical and analytical in that regard of where you want to be on the course at what time. You got to kind of plan that out. But this time we followed them through 18 holes, which was great. The cons of that was, again, not we were in our bubble, right? And I think being in a bubble it gets a little old, but at the same time, again, that last, it's safe and we're following the rules. But at the same time, you alwawills want to kind of go out and see what everyone else is doing and have conversations about how you guys are doing up at Whitworth or PLU or UPS or Willamette or whatnot. And some of my older upperclassmen have made friendships with other teammates from other teams, and they definitely want to see them and have conversations with them and just kind of spark it up and whatnot. And so that kind of was a con in that regard, but also just the planning part. A lot of work amongst not only our administrators, but our training staff. I mean, they had to test every week. We, as a small team, in numbers wise, we got tested regularly. I mean, it's sometimes week after week after week. And that was, again, that's a pro and a con in itself. Just a lot of work to do that, but also it's a pro that we're keeping this campus safe, keeping us going, keeping the sports rolling, trying to get to where we want to get to, which is normalcy. And they did a great job with kind of handling that and making us feel comfortable in that regard. But kudos out to everyone involved with this season, officials, our commissioner. She not necessarily knows much about the sport. She definitely is, like a lot of other people who haven't really coached the sport or kind of know how to set up a tournament, whatnot. She's definitely learning, but she definitely made it work this year. And so there are some bumps and ditches that we had to cross and jump over, but we made it work again. Again, grateful for that. Grateful for the opportunity that we have two teams kind of representing the Northwest Conference going into nationals. And we wouldn't have that opportunity if we didn't have a season. So very grateful for that.
James Yen is our guest, the head coach of Lewis and Clark men's and women's golf on lcpioneers.com live. Our only guest for today's show. We will let you know as soon as we can the schedule for ongoing shows. Excited too about the LCs, which we'll tell you about coming up after our interview with Coach Yen. I want you to have a chance to highlight some of your golfers, some of your student athletes this past year. I'm going to start with just some of the headlines in the sense that you talked about Ben Welker, senior, playing last competitions for the Pioneers. And then you look at the headlines on the women's side too. Cameron Ford, top 10 on all of the championship events, all the majors as you called them. Let's start with those two, and then just give me some takeaways that you learned about your team over the course of the semester.
Well, we had it was a great learning lesson this semester about how to handle adversity. I mean, with this pandemic for one, but also golf brings its own intricacies to the table with how to perform. Always, and all these golfers understand that and definitely rose up to the occasion. Ben Welker, very, very proud of him on the boys' side for his number one, his leadership, but his on taking with trying to get the season going. He was texting me and calling me all the time about when this season's going, when can we get out and practice, when can we use the sim room, all that good stuff. When can we use the weight room? So his diligence in that regard kept me on my toes, which was awesome. But it showed me his leadership and his audacity to kind of get better as a golfer, right, and as a student athlete. And so definitely shined. He definitely was my number one on the men's side throughout this semester. In that regard, he shot the best. Had some low numbers here and there. Definitely grew big time from last year to this year. Really calmed down a little bit. Worked with our swing coach, Aaron Benedetti. I'm gonna not go through this program without giving them a lot of credit. My two assistant coaches, Drew Groshong and Aaron. But definitely worked with Aaron a little bit with his swing, kind of slowed down his tempo. One of the fastest club speeds out there. He definitely flies the ball probably in the top 5 of the conference with his swing. Definitely was able to control his ball more so than he was in the past, and that's why his scores were a lot lower. Calmed down, understood how to play the game. He was a former baseball player, and so he kind of transitioned from baseball to golf. And I love those multi-sport athletes. And so he definitely grew with that role and became the leader as the lone senior. And also the other guys, Grant, Eli, and our newcomer Renz, definitely had some great outings and some PRs this year. But a lot of things to take away from every tournament, to learn from. And every day we were out there just practicing, right? Just taking away little things and trying to get ourselves better. And on the women's side, wow, Cameron Ford. I mean, all the ladies definitely did awesome this year. I think Cameron Steady Eddie. She was maybe a little bit disappointed at her last tournament with the Northwest Conference Championships. Top 10. I mean, give her credit. She did great. She is deserving of that top 10 recognition. I think she's one of the top 5 golfers in our conference. And I think she knows that as well. But it's the thing about golf is you play 2 rounds for us every tournament, but you play multiple tournaments. So there's opportunity for growth, but there's also opportunity to kind of make some mistakes here and there. You just have to minimize those mistakes, right? And learn from that. And Cameron definitely knows how to kind of work the course and knows her swing, and knows the mentality side behind golf. And all those other golfers, we had Quincy, Hassan, Greta, and Olivia. They had some opportunities for some PRs. I think some of our ladies had some PRs, some personal records this year on their game. And I'm super proud of how they handled this year with practice, with getting out and intentionally going out and getting better as a golfer, and growing to a part where we can kind of peak at the right moment. And so our last tournament was really tough. It was 80 degrees up there. We haven't seen that in a long time. It was up in Spokane, and so it was a long trip, long bus ride. It took a toll on us mentally and physically. I think every player kind of had tidbits about my body is sore, my legs are sore, my mind's a little bit wary, because it was a long tournament and it was a long season, right? Just what we could and couldn't do. But I'm super proud on both sides. Cameron Ford, I'm excited to see what she can do next year, and all the players coming back next semester. I'm really excited because I think we can kind of somewhat, let's cross our fingers, Ryan, but we can kind of somewhat get back to normalcy next semester, and get a kind of regular season going and playing with other teams and getting to practice and using our facilities and all that sort of stuff. So I'm excited about that. I think we kind of put in place what we need to do as a team and as individuals to kind of raise the bar a little bit. And we had some players that stayed home this year. We had 2 boys, Matt and Alex, who are horses kind of on the guys' side that definitely shoot some really good scores. So I'm excited about them coming back. Eve Parson from the women's side is going to come back as well. And I got some handful of recruits that I'm really excited about. I'm not going to share any too much details with them just yet, but really excited to bring them on to hopefully bring some competition to the team internally, right, to get everyone better. And I think with competition breeds success, and it raises, and just like at Lewis and Clark with academics, you come here to get a good education. You got the Coach Losi saying of our head football coach. He always says, if you come here knowing that you have 5 gears in your car, you're going to understand that you're going to have a 6th gear in there somewhere. And that's what I think a competition brings. I think that's what academics here at Lewis and Clark brings. It just gets the best out of you. And I'm excited about the recruits. We're bringing them from all parts of the country, from the South, from Hawaii, from out east. So we're crossing our fingers to kind of be very competitive next year on both sides of the ball, on the men's and the women's side.
Well, we're excited for it too, and as you mentioned, hoping that everything goes according to plan. Obviously, Lewis and Clark is approaching the fall 2021 semester. Like everything will be much more like pre-pandemic style. More information, of course, about that lclark.edu is where you can find all the plans for fall 2021. But what we do know is to hear some of the success, Coach, that your team had, given the fact that you were doing different practice schedules and there was a lot of uncertainty, the resilience your student athletes showed to have some of that success this year. All the kudos to them, all the kudos to you and your assistant coaches as well. And we look forward to things coming up in fall 2021. James Yen, thank you so much for stopping by the show today.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate what you do too, buddy.
Absolutely. That's James Yen, the head coach of Lewis and Clark Golf. I mean, that's the thing is I remember looking at the scores that would come in. Lewis and Clark hosted the Northwest Conference Fall Classic. We get those scores. A big shout out to Sharon Sexton, who's our associate athletic director at Lewis and Clark, was key in hosting the Fall Classic that was held out in Aloha, Oregon at the Reserve Vineyards and Golf Club. And you look at the scores that were coming through, and then you start to look at performances, not just from, we talked about Cameron Ford as one of the best golfers in the entire conference, a former Northwest Conference Freshman of the Year, but you look at some of the scores coming out as well from some of the competitors for Lewis and Clark that weren't posting up top 10 scores, but you're seeing best ever finish in a Northwest Conference postseason event, right? And to have that resiliency and to have that ability to have a best ever score in circumstances that don't necessarily facilitate that, right? I think that that's a very neat story to hear Coach Yen share, and we saw that firsthand with the Lewis and Clark golf programs this year. So pretty exciting about what they were able to do. And as Coach mentioned too, there were a lot of student athletes who would have otherwise been competing this year that because of the pandemic opted out, decided to stay home, take their classes remotely. And we're excited to see if that's something that next year with the full roster assembled, assuming everything goes according to plan, to see what these teams can do with both the men's and women's golf programs at Lewis and Clark. Now, I did mention the LCs. I do want to get to that. Before I do want to recap some of the things that happened last week with Lewis and Clark athletics. And we have some pretty exciting news to share in that regard. One note, Cameron Ford, Ben Welker, we've had numerous of the student athletes from the golf programs on Lewis and Clark with our show, from Lewis and Clark on our show at lcpioneers.com/live. This is our YouTube page. This playlist has every single show that we've done since March 2020. I think the first show was on March 31st to be specific. And yeah, we've had interviews. I think Cameron was on sometime last August. I think Ben was on a little bit before that. And just here or there, a chance to talk to some of the student athletes who compete for Coach Yen and the program that extends to all 19 of our teams. You can find all of those past episodes on our website, Inside the Fan Zone, and as well as on YouTube, youtube.com/lcpios. Let's recap the weekend. Some good things that were happening for Lewis and Clark athletics. Particularly, I mentioned that likely we're going to have some of our Lewis and Clark student athletes into the postseason. And these are some of the qualifying sports as well, in the sense that the top 4 teams, for instance, will make it. Things are looking pretty good for Lewis and Clark softball. Very good likelihood that they'll be in the Northwest Conference tournament. Have to hopefully take care of things with 4 games, 2 at home and 2 away against Pacific coming up this weekend. But the Lewis and Clark softball team, a big finale doubleheader on Saturday against Puget Sound, win the first contest by a final of 6-5, and then the second one, Samantha Gildersleeve, a freshman right fielder for Lewis and Clark, hits a home run in the bottom of the 7th inning, a walk-off home run, and Lewis and Clark takes the series 3 out of 4 against the Loggers. And that was significant too, because it was the 14th home run of the year for Gildersleeve, again a freshman who now leads the Northwest Conference in home runs. But during the course of that series, namely the Friday opening doubleheader, Gildersleeve homered in both of those contests, and by doing so, had homered in 6 consecutive games. That is an NCAA Division III record. We're going through the finalizing process of submitting that record to the NCAA, confirming it and all of that, but the record book shows 5. And I want to give a big shout out to Lewis and Clark baseball alumnus Jim Bray. Sent us an email to point that out, because I had written the words 6 straight home runs, or 6 straight games with a home run. And I was really like, wow, it's got to be quite an accomplishment. And Jim probably thought the same thing, opened up the record book and sent me that anecdote. So I thought that was pretty cool, and certainly worth mentioning. I mean, we're talking about a freshman with 14 home runs. Lewis and Clark's team the softball team has already broken its record for most home runs in a season. So pretty exciting things coming out of the softball program, head coach Shauna Cyrus, and looking forward to seeing what happens with their team, if they can take even a couple of games against Pacific, looks like things would be pretty good for the Pioneers to be in the Northwest Conference tournament. And that's the case for tennis, too. Men's tennis looks like they're already in the field. Haven't got the official word on that yet. Top 4 teams end up making the Northwest Conference tournament. Women's tennis also very likely has a shot at making the field as well. They're in more of a deadlock for that 4th and final spot in the standings. NWC Sports is the Northwest Conference website, and you can find more information as well as go to our website, lcpioneers.com/this week, and get this weekend's game schedule. You can look at the full composite schedule on our website, lcpioneers.com as well. A big shout out to Rachel Rice, the junior for Lewis and Clark women's tennis, the latest Northwest Conference Student Athlete of the Week, won not for this past weekend, but the weekend prior, was named the Northwest Conference Women's Tennis Student Athlete of the Week. For her accomplishments. A lot of great performances from the tennis team this year. Track and field had a split site competition last weekend. Some significant performances. Off the top of my head, Tyson Booz, the 4th best Northwest Conference mark in the 400 meters, I believe. You can find more information about that at our website, lcpioneers.com. And then baseball finalized senior day. 11 seniors said goodbye to the Lewis and Clark baseball program as they hosted Puget Sound. The Pioneers will wrap up the season in Spokane at Whitworth this upcoming weekend as well. So until we see you again on Thursday, you can find more information about the show at lcpioneers.com/live. Takes you straight to this Facebook Live page. We'll always post when we have a new guest coming up ahead of time. Sometimes a little bit shorter notice with Coach Yin. I don't think we had that up until about an hour ago, but certainly know that if we have a show, it'll be posted on lcpioneers.com/live, and we'll share that with you. Last but not least, the LCs, which is Lewis and Clark's excellence in the year, and Lewis and Clark's year of sports, technically. Excellence in Lewis and Clark, the year of sports, LCs. We're going to have a senior celebration coming up tomorrow night at Griswold Stadium. It is closed to the public. There's not necessarily a stream for that, but we're inviting the seniors to be in person. Restrictions still going through the pandemic prevent us from having the entire student athlete base on site, but we're going to stream it so that those student athletes from the team who are not seniors can watch, and just celebrating some of the key moments from this past year. We'll have some of the coaches stepping up, giving speeches, senior slideshow, recognition of the seniors so they can collect their varsity letter and their cord that they can wear during graduation. Really exciting to have everybody come up and get some photos taken. The LCs is always a big event. We missed it completely last year. Have a senior celebration version of it this year, and it should be a lot of fun. Wednesday at 7:30 for the Lewis and Clark seniors, in person for everybody in the athletics department online. And everybody's been emailed about that too. So if you haven't seen information and you're a student athlete, be sure to check your lclark.edu email. We'll see you on Thursday. I'm Ryan Goff. Big thanks again to Coach Yen for joining us, and big thanks to you for watching. This has been lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream. We'll see you again soon for more of the show. Goodbye, everybody.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts. Because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.